We are at Team Mancuso in Southwest Houston. Here we go. FZ-07. That feels weird. Handlebars feel super weird.
We're just going down there, exit Beltway. Honestly, man, you can pass me up. You can do your thing. Just ride safe.
Ooh, it feels weird. Notice right off the bat, the first pegs are in a very strange position, like mid-pegged like that. Definitely not used to that. Oops, sorry. No worries, you're good, yeah. So, like it feels real light. I'll give it that. It seems like it has tons of power so far. It is a little strange, like not having anything down. I gotta look down quite a bit. Mirrors seem like they're in a queer place. The mid pegs feel a little funny. That takes some getting used to. I definitely need new handlebars. Like right off the bat, I could say that new handlebars would be an awesome thing.
Here's some of the pros of the 2017 Yamaha FZ-07. First off, it's got a smooth engine. It has a compact 689cc liquid-cooled inline twin-cylinder cross-plane engine with fuel injection. It's smooth for a V-twin, not a lot of vibrations, not jerky at low speeds, but it's kind of buzzy at higher speeds and RPMs. Secondly, it's got lots of torque. Lots and lots of low-end torque. Lots of low-end power for wheelies and hooligan fun. But it kind of dies out in mid-gear, so you don't get a lot of top-end speed at all. Which, I mean, if that's what you're going into it for, it makes a pretty good beginner mid-level bike. It has decent throttle response for the engine type and size. The power delivery isn't sudden, so it has some room for error. You're not going to immediately loop yourself backwards by chopping on the throttle a bit. But the wheel might come up. Next on the list is weight. It's got a really light weight, 397 pounds wet, so that makes it pretty easy to control. It's nimble and maneuverable on the road. It has a really low seat height at 31.7 inches. The seat height is pretty attainable for people that are pretty short or even tall people alike. It makes for a pretty enjoyable ride. It has an upright seat positioning, easy on the back for longer rides, easy to maneuver at lower speeds, and it's not going to kill your back like a sport bike. Braking was pretty good. It has pretty good firm brakes. Suspension affects the dipping though, and when you front brake, it dips down pretty decently. ABS is offered on this model, which is good for most people, but bad for hooligans. They don't want that if you want to do stoppies. Gas mileage on this thing is pretty great. Good gas mileage stock. Not a big tank though, 3.7 gallons. Gets you about 120 miles per tank if you ride it like most of us would. I gotta say, it looks really good. But when you get on the bike, you really see how cheap it actually is. It creaks, it groans, it's got a lot of plastic. It doesn't feel the most solid in the world, but at that price range, what did you expect, really? It has a pretty nice digital readout for the tach. I kind of liked it. I liked the way the shape is. It was easy to read. Nothing crazy like a Ducati, but it was overall pretty good. The price point is pretty great on these things, and that's really, I think, where it shines. Coming in right under 7K, it's a pretty good bang for your buck for money. Especially if you buy it in the used market, you can get them at an awfully good deal. This bike is extremely popular, and that's one of the really great things about it. Lots of sales on this bike means lots of aftermarket parts and accessories, tons to choose from to customize your look, protect it from stunting damage, or improve the performance overall. And that's where I really would recommend. To make this bike shine from stock, you really want to add an ECU flash, power commander, and a full exhaust system. My last point on the pros is ultimately this makes a great beginner bike. Tons of people could start on this bike and be totally fine. You ride this thing without chopping the throttle, and it's not going to come right up on you. Now you ride this thing like an idiot and you're going to get yourself in trouble, but that's any bike. You ride like an idiot and you're going to get yourself in trouble. Now we'll get into the cons about this bike, and there's a number of them. First off, I'll go into the foot pegs. I really did not like the mid-pegged foot position. I didn't think it was a good position. I smacked my legs a lot, and I could feel a lot of vibration through the foot pegs. Next were the handlebars. I hated the stock handlebars. As Jake the Garden Snake said, they're really wiggly and they move around, and it doesn't make you feel firm and awesome about riding the bike. You feel like they might slip out when you're moving around, and that's not a good feeling when you're at higher speeds, or really any speed. It had a strange taper backward as well, and I don't really like standard handlebars for this reason, is because it makes you sit like an idiot and you don't feel like you're one with the bike, and that would immediately be something to go. One of the next things would be engine braking. It has a pretty intense engine braking when you dip off the throttle. I can hear this has been resolved with an ECU flash, and that's not such a big deal. I recommend doing that to the bike anyway to really bring out the power, make this bike shine. So that's, not a huge con, but it is there. So if you keep the bike stock, it has some serious engine braking. One of the worst things about this bike would be the squishy suspension. It's not bad for beginning, maybe even mid-level riders, but advanced riders would want to swap that stuff out real quick, the rear and the front. It's okay for normal street riding, but it shows its flaws when you get aggressive with it real quick. It just wants to dip down and doesn't feel planted in the turns. Any sort of braking shows how crap they are as well. Another con for me was the lack of high-end speed. This thing really didn't have a lot more power than the cruiser I'm riding, ultimately, like at a top-end level. And for some people that's not a con, and some for people it is. I wanted to go a little bit faster if I was riding a bike like this and, spending this kind of money. I would want to go faster. This thing tops out maybe a little over 110, and that's for a bike this size at this kind of sporty level. You're supposed to have fun with it. I would expect a bit more out of it, but honestly, getting yourself into those speeds could get you in trouble. Another bad thing is the engine buzz. At higher RPMs and higher speeds, there was a definite buzz in the handlebars and the foot pegs at higher RPMs and speeds. It was not the most enjoyable thing, but some bikes do this, especially the lighter the weight the bike, you tend to have more vibration in the bike, so I understand. Maybe this can be fixed by swapping out with aftermarket parts, but initially I didn't love how buzzy it was. Another really bad flaw on this bike, and maybe this is rider error, but every time I downshifted, I got a rear tire skirp. It was so easy to do. I downshift what I thought would be rather carefully, and almost every single time I'd get a skirp on the back tire, which none of the other bikes I rode in this test ride this day did anything like that. So that kind of annoyed me, and I don't know why it was doing that. Maybe it was me being too brutal on my clutch outs. I'm not sure, but I did not enjoy the way it would downshift skirp. Another really annoying factor was where the horn was placed. It was in a really bad spot right next to where the turn signals were. At first, when I went to hit the turn signals, I'd always hit the horn, and I did that a number of times on this test ride, which made me feel like an idiot. I can't help but feel like that's a design flaw. This is every bike ever, but the stock mirrors on this thing were just the worst, and bad placement, they look terrible. What can be said about stock mirrors? It's the first thing you rip off, the first thing to throw away, the first thing you hate, pretty much. So yeah, immediately on the cons list. Last but not least, the seat. The stock seat was not very comfortable. It wasn't terrible, but I had heard that it was pretty decent, and I've had better, honestly. Like, if I was doing longer rides, touring on this thing, I would pretty much prolapse your ass pretty quick. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure you could get an aftermarket seat that might fix this ride up, and most bikes are fixed with an aftermarket seat, but it definitely goes on the con list for me because I'm a bigger guy and I got a lot of weight in the seat. So yeah, I'm gonna put the seat as shit.
That was dope, man. This thing's pretty fun.
Now, finally, the neutral points of the bike. And these are things that weren't good or bad, just things I noted about the bike. First off, lots of wind. It's a naked bike, that's a given. It's going to have a lot of wind, there's no fairings. It's going to hit you with a lot of wind on the highway, and you better be ready for that. Next would be the exhaust. It is a really quiet stock exhaust. I mean, when I turned this thing on, I could barely hear that it was turned on. If I hadn't been looking at the starter when it turned on, I really wouldn't have heard it, to be honest with you. And that's not a bad thing, but for me, I like a bike that has a better sounding, louder exhaust so people can hear me, and I enjoy the ride a bit more. I heard the engine more than I heard the exhaust, and that was a little bit weird. I was hearing the engine wind up more than I was hearing the actual good tones of the exhaust. For me, I like it to be the other way around. This thing has no modes or frills. There's no traction control, there's no wheelie control, there's no nanny features of any kind on this thing. It's straight, get on the bike and go. And that may be the reason why I was getting the skirps on the back tire. It very easily could be that. There's no traction control. So that makes it, to some degree, not as good of a beginning bike for someone, but if they know what they're doing, not so bad. And lastly, this thing was marketed mainly towards women in the ads. I don't know why. I guess because it's better made for someone 5'6" to 5'8", but it really is designed for someone shorter, and I guess they designed it maybe for women. I guess when men saw the ads, they didn't think it was quite as approachable. Maybe they didn't think it would be as small with the women in the ads. I'm not sure exactly what they were thinking there, but seemingly they've marketed it much more towards women than men, though men can ride it just fine, and I don't think it's a feminine bike by any means, but it seems to be that they want to gear it more towards women in their ads. I don't know why this is. Maybe someone can let me know.
All right. Well, that was an amazing test ride at Team Mancuso Powersports Southwest. Those guys were so freaking nice. That was the most amazing thing ever. Like, he let me do what I wanted on the bike. We got to go around and do a good test ride for each one of them. Now I'm going to shoot some photography for them and I'll get back out of here. And I'm like, I can't speak any higher about this place. So come down and see these guys at Team Mancuso. Get a test ride in. They will absolutely, you sit on anything, ride anything, try anything. They're firm believers in, if you haven't ridden it, you're not going to buy it. And that's the damn truth. So get down here and check these guys out. They're absolutely wonderful. I couldn't speak any higher. So Team Mancuso Powersports Southwest Houston, and I'll toss up the number information here. So take care, guys. Thanks for joining me today, and this was amazing.
I know that you came to party, baby, 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 baby. Look like we gon' leave this party with somebody else's lady. I know that you came to party, baby, 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 baby. Look like we gon' leave this party with somebody else's lady. I know that you came to party, baby, baby, baby.